Been wanting to unbox this one for a while. It's the Phrozen Sonic Mega 8K. Let's check this one out. So what I'll do here is I'll just tip it up like this. So I'm just going to support it here, leave the box open, and then would have been nice for one of these 5 camera guys to give me a hand, but no. We can have a look at the bottom here. Big, decent rubber size feet here and brushed aluminium plate. It's definitely a beast. There it is there. Let's get this plastic off now and have a look. Probably don't use a knife if you can avoid it, just because you might cut the acrylic or the powder coated finish. The door handles aren't on here, so that's something that we're going to have to put on. The box here, now this might just be a little bit dull because it's an empty box. That just must be your packing material there to protect the build plate, or the Z-axis I should say. This looks like it's in pretty snug. Okay, so by pulling this side off, I was able to slide the build plate out. Now that's going to give me the height to get this out. Now you'll notice straight away that this build plate is a little bit different to most. Some companies went this way with the larger printers. They call it perforation, or simply a lot of holes in the aluminium build plate. The main reason for this is to help with the suction force. When you have something that big, the suction force of the whole thing being very flat down on the bottom of the FEP sheet and the vat, when it lifts up, you can imagine there being a lot of force wanting to pull that up. So the idea of the holes is it's going to allow that to happen more easily. There are advantages and disadvantages of having the holes, and we can talk more about that as we get through this. So now this should come out relatively easy now, so that's easier. It feels like there's something, whoop, what's this? We have after sales and service warranty and a very comprehensive manual. It also comes with a ScanDisk USB 16 gigabyte. They're the door handles, so we're going to have to put them on. I haven't seen this one before. A hex wrench size chart, so it tells you which size you need for the different areas. So you've got the Z-axis, the door handles, and for the vat. And we have a couple of very cool stickers here from Phrozen. And here are the different size, the 3 different size. This one, as you can see, has an Australian plug. I always like getting an Australian plug, but this time I didn't order it from overseas. I actually got it from JCar Electronics here in Australia. They are selling these. I'm not sure if they'll still have any left in stock by the time you watch this. A pair of gloves, standard funnel, a pretty ordinary looking little scraper. That's disappointing, Phrozen. Like, you're selling a printer this big with a build plate this big, and you give me a scraper that big. That's a bit disappointing, and it actually feels very flimsy. That's plastic. I wouldn't like to see what our Resin Away product would do to that plastic, but anyway, use Resin Away on that at your own risk. And then the plastic one, which is pretty standard, again, standard small size for a vat this big. I'd like to see, something a little bit bigger. So here's the vat with its FEP sheet. It uses PFA or NFEP as Phrozen call it. NFEP stands for not FEP. Now, some of you would say that sounds a bit loose, but when you're doing something that big, it's probably quite hard to get it very tight. To save on aluminium and not have the aluminium go that wide, they've just used these little bits of aluminium sticking out to the side, screwed in, and then on the printer here they've done the same as a place to put these in. So they sit there like that, and then that goes in there like that, which is not that bad. It's not that elegant, but you know what? It's going to do the job. The idea of this is to hold the vat in place so it doesn't lift, and it's going to do that no problem. And it does make this a little bit lighter. Just having a quick look around the printer, we see the Z rails here, nice and chunky, which they need to be. A really decent size worm drive here on the Z-axis. Interesting way to do it. It looks like they've been able to cover the hole where the worm drive goes into the motor, and I really like that. Personally, I've actually experienced it as well, where resin has got splashed onto the worm drive and gone, or splashed over the vat and gone into the the printer itself and into that motor, and it can cause all sorts of problems. So that's quite a neat little solution. I don't like that it's got its own little well there, and if a resin goes in there, it's going to sit in there. I don't know why they've done it like that, but you know, it is a solution to a problem. Here you can see is the sensor for the Z-axis stop, we call it the end stop, and you can see the little pin here that would come down and go into that end stop there, and that's what would say, okay, now I'm at the bottom. That's pretty standard these days. One thing I do like, I have to say, with these big double doors is the ability to be able to come in at the side here. I think that's quite nice. It does give you access to this quite large build plate here. Be aware that this is not the only room you need, because you're going to need basically this and that side on either side to be able to fit it. So if you've got another printer and it's sat there, you're not going to be able to get the thing out. So you really have to come right out to here. So that's actually increasing the size of it quite dramatically and actually doubles the width, which makes a lot of sense. It's always a good habit to get into doing these screws up, even though we're still looking at the printer and not using it. And the reason being is that if you don't do them up every time you put the vat back in place and you get distracted and you go and do something else, it's not the sort of thing that you want to not have done up, and especially with a printer this size, because if the build plate came down on top of that without these being done up, it could actually lift this up off the screen and then drop it back down and damage the printer or the screen, and that would not be good. So have a quick look here as how that all sits there. So that has to go that way, so this one has to close first. Okay guys, so here we are. We've got the specs now for the Phrozen Mega 8K. It's got a 5-inch large touch panel LCD screen. It can use Box V1.9 or above. Also I use Lychee with no problem. It has connectivity, it's got a front USB port and also the Ethernet on the rear. The light source is a 405 nanometer ParaLED Matrix 3. The release film is PFA or NFEP. The XY resolution is 43 UM. The layer thickness range is 0.01 to 0.3. Wow, that's quite high, 0.3. Maximum printing speed, 17 millimeters an hour. Don't know about that one. The printer size is 47.5 by 40 by 68 centimeters. The print volume is 33 by 18.5 by 40 centimeters, and the printer weight is 35 kilos. It's not light, you'll need a friend to help you lift it up onto the bench. Okay, so we've got the laptop here. It's now time to slice a file and grab a calibration model. I always recommend calibration models, as you know, when you do your first print. Very tempting with a printer this sort of size to put something huge on and be disappointed very quickly. It's always good to dial in any new resin that you're using, especially with a new printer. So we're going to do that now. I've got a new calibration model I wanted to talk to you about called the UNICAL. Now the way the UNICAL works is you need a set of calipers and you can print it, and then when it comes off the build plate you measure it with the calipers and you see if the parts are bigger than they should be, then we need to reduce the cure time per layer, or if the parts are smaller then they need to be increased. So it's very simple and a really good way to just tell if you've dialed it in properly. And the other thing is it's very quick, but let's just have a quick look here. So I'm just on the website here. If you go to the resources and then you go to free downloads, you'll see here calibration model. So click on that there. You come in here and you'll see try on new UNICAL calibration model. So it's got all the instructions here on how to do it. I won't go through them today. You guys can check that out. There's the model there. You can see it's in two parts. So this part here fits inside this part here, and you want it to fit nice and snugly. So we're going to download that file there. Today I'm going to choose the Lychee slicer. So now this is opened up, we want to make sure that we have the right printer selected. So we're going to come in here and we're going to have to add the new printer because I haven't added it yet. So it gives you a choice, Lychee, now, whether you're resin 3D printer or filament. Well, we're certainly resin, so we hit the resin side. And then you can type in here, start typing Frozen, it should pop up. Here they all come here. Originally this wasn't supported with anything other than Box, but now it can be used. So you'll see here the Phrozen Sonic Mighty. This is the Mega 8K. So there it is there, the Mega 8K. Click on that. You can see there it's added it. Today we're going to use the tensile resin. So we're going to go to add a new resin. And of course, because the tensile resin is new at the time of filming this, it won't be here. So we will have to add it. So if you go down the list here, you'll see that Monocular is indeed there. We don't have the resin name there yet, but you can just add it manually. If you just go down here to add new resin, you'll see here, you go to Monocular, we can add a new name, and because it's part of the industrial range, I'll call it industrial. The colour, we're going to put a new colour. So here I'm going to put tensile grey, and then that will show up so we know what we're dealing with. You can also use a comment here, so you could use that for the grey and you could put tensile in the comment. I've just chosen to do it that way. So we come down here and we look at the standard settings. Burn-in layer is 6. I normally run that at 4, but I'll leave that for now. I'm going to change this to 40. Obviously, because this is the first print we've done on this printer with the tensile resin or with any resin, these are going to be a good starting point for me. Once I've got them dialed in, I'll obviously publish the right ones on our website, so you guys don't have to go through this guesswork. Now I'm going to grab the UNICAL model and I'm going to add it to the slicer, and you can see it's just popped in here straight on the build plate. If we go into this mode here in the prepare mode, and we can actually see a representation of the slice, but also the printer and how it's going to print, which is quite good. And the other thing I like with this slicer is the ability to be able to see the model in the scale next to a pen and a can of drink and things. It just gives you a good representation of how big it is and make sure that you've got the scale right. So that all looks okay. There it is in its form of how the screen is going to represent it, and just check that there's no strange things there, and then we're going to save it to the USB. It tells you there that print time is going to be about 36 minutes, and we're going to hit export to file, UNICAL version 3.8, that's okay. Okay, so it's time to get this thing powered up, and we've got the USB stick there, so I'll pull that out. So that goes in the front here. I think the next thing we need to do is definitely turn this on. Now you'll notice that there's no power button on the front here. That's a little bit disappointing to me. I always like to see power buttons on the front. They're easy to get, and especially this is such a large printer. If you had this on a bench and then you had to lean around the back to get to it. So if you have a look here, it's just on top of the power cord. All going well, should fire up the screen, and you'll see that the screen has now come to life. We've got a little beep there. We can click in the tools to start with. We've got the Z calibration. Now I've been told that this has been pre-leveled from the factory, so I'm going to trust that in this case. Normally I wouldn't, rather than erring on the side of caution, I'm going to go with their pre-level, and we'll see. Look, they do move, but we did see how well that was packed in the printer when it arrived, so let's hope that it hasn't moved. You can see that it's got the network. We haven't had a chance to have a look at that yet. The vac cleaning, that's pretty standard. Info, that just usually gives you a bit of information about the printer. Now 3D print, so this is the one we're interested in. You can see there's a UNICAL version 3.8, the one that we pre-sliced. It's also come with a test rook, but we're going to use our UNICAL model here. So when we get to that stage, we click on it, shouldn't start until we hit the big go button. Just quickly here, I didn't mention it before, there is these handles for carrying, which I thought was a good idea, especially for such a large printer. The other thing I've noticed is, I know it's not printing yet, but it's very quiet. The fans that run in the background you can hear are actually the projector and some of these lights on the set. I can't actually hear any fans on that, but I know that they're quite clever now, as they only run these fans sometimes when they're actually printing, so we'll see. Next thing we need to do is get some resin in here, and because I'm about to do anything with resin, we need to obviously put some gloves on, because we always like to play it safe when we're dealing with resin. Gotta love that. We're gonna grab our trusty bottle of tensile resin. So this is our new industrial grade resin, so I thought perfect opportunity to use the tensile resin in a very large printer. So if you're going to do a short run manufacturing piece, or maybe a whole helmet, tensile resin would be perfect. Now this vat apparently will take 1.5 litres to nearly 2 litres of resin, so that's a lot. So just give this a little bit of a shake. So you'll see all our 1 litre bottles have this induction seal. Now I know that some people find that quite hard to peel off. I do as well with gloves. I always find it easier just to get your sharp scraper and just just do that. You can even put a cross in it, is a good way to get these off. And then you can just do that. It's pretty simple and easy to remove that way, and then just disposing of that in the bin. We've made sure that everything is where it needs to be. It had a bit of dust underneath the FEP sheet and on the screen, so we got a cloth and we wiped that down to make sure that dust is gone. I thought it'd be a good idea, just because we've got the build plate here from our print. If some of you may have seen the M3 Max video we did. So this is a build plate from the M3 Max. You can see there, it's at least 1 centimetre, maybe a little bit under around the sides on the edges here, and this edge here, it looks like at least 1.5 to even maybe 2 on each side. So it is a fair bit bigger, which is good. And then the screen size we know is a 15-inch screen, and the M3 Max is a 13 point something. The other difference is you can see here obviously no holes, but also there's tapers off. I'm assuming this is going to get a lot of resin on the top of it, so you're going to have to clear that off before you get the build plate out, otherwise it's going to make a lot of mess having all that resin stuck on the back of it. I do like a taper on the top of the build plate, so I think that Phrozen really need to head down that path. Let's pour this in now, but you'll see it'll take that whole bottle no problem. Hit the go button there. Now the fan's definitely kicked in. As I said earlier, the fans from my projectors and some of the lights around here are actually way higher than this, which is a great thing. No one likes noisy fans. There it comes. Now, really not looking forward to cleaning that up, I have to say. Well, a couple of beeps there, so it sounds like it's doing its thing. You'll notice here on the screen it's showing the file that we sliced with the 3 models on there across the build plate. It's not a bad idea, especially with a build plate this size, to add a number of models. You could have put 1 in each corner and a couple in the middle, and that's going to tell you if you're going to get good adhesion to the build plate on all areas of the build plate. So this door here has to be closed first because of the way that this lip works, and there it's closed. Anycubic, Illigu, they've really gone with this filtering idea with carbon filters and things, and Phrozen just seems to have ignored it, going, you know what, we don't think they do anything, so we're just not going to put them in. I'm in 2 minds with the carbon filters. I think that they may filter some of the fumes, but I think, to be honest with you, with a printer this size, you're better off leaving the doors closed and the fumes will just stay inside the printer itself. The problem I see with a carbon filter, if it's not catching 100% of those fumes, then all you're doing is expelling them into the room. Some of the Illigus, for example, have a filter in the back and it just filters and tries to clean the air within the printer itself. To me, that's a better idea, just not blowing it back into the room. All our resins now work in a large format printer like this. So the big vat resin originally was brought out to work over a long period of time and have the pigment stay suspended. Now we have put that technology from big vat to all our resins, so all our resins will stay suspended, so you don't need to worry about that, which is great, and it gives you a lot more options if you are printing with a large format printer such as this one. So the tensile resin's printing away there. We'll wait and see how that goes. It looks like we've done about 15% and it's going well. Okay, so you'll see here the print's finished and it's come all the way up. It was quite slow to do that, but there's all this resin on the top of this, and I talked about that earlier with the tapering. So it's going to be important to get this resin off, otherwise it's just A, a waste of resin, and B, it's going to be messy, and we like to eliminate as much mess as possible when we do resin printing. And you can see here I've made a mess, which is not cool. We'll need to clean that up with one of our resin away wipes. These are great for any sort of spills like this. These trays we sell as well, and you can get them from, you know, any hardware store, or we've got the Bunnings here in Australia, but you've all got your own versions, and they're just, you know, a barbecue or an oven tray, an oven foil tray. Now this build plate is so big that, to be honest, we might need to get a bigger size, but you can obviously put it on a bit of an angle. But see, that way I can take that across the room. The resin's not going to go anywhere but in that tray, and we're just going to keep that mess down. Now I'm going to have a look here of what we've got. Now, a couple of interesting points here. I'm actually glad that I didn't put the transition layers on. Now I normally do, but I wanted to see if we saw that in this case, and it's shown us very clearly what happens when transition layers aren't used. And so what's happened there is you've got your base layers, which are cured at, I think we put down 35 seconds. And then the first normal layer is 3.5 seconds. And you can see that that hasn't been able to adhere to that very well cured layer. So the transition layer will step through and allow the layers to transition from the 35 seconds down to the 3.5, and it will avoid that happening. So definitely something you should use, and it was good that I didn't leave it on to show you. I was interested to see how hard it was to get off with those holes, but it actually wasn't too bad. Now, obviously, because of the nature of the build plate, it does have the holes in it. So it's going to do two things to the base of any print. If you wanted to print something totally flat and have no effects on the bottom like that, you can't do it on this build plate. Now I know you're all thinking, oh, I'm just going to put a flexible build plate on there and that will solve all my problems. Well, it may, but it also may cause you other problems as well, such as shifting in large prints. We've talked about the suction force. As soon as you get rid of these holes and you put a plate over the top of this, you're going to bring back that issue with this huge suction force. So I don't think in this case I would be putting a flexible build plate system on this. The way you're going to have to combat these types of surfaces, or if you didn't want to have it with this sort of thing on the back of it, you'd actually have to use a platform or just build it up off the build plate and use supports. I can't see what's going on in this vat, but I know because I can look in my tray here and I can see that we've got at least 2 of those little squares missing. Now, they are somewhere in there. I need to remove them. The quickest way to damage your screen is to now put a print on top of that and have this build plate go down and push on that, and it's going to crush your very expensive monochrome screen, potentially damaging it. Always recommend between prints to fully drain the vat. I've found one of them there. When you get things stuck on the bottom of the vat like this, you've got to be careful because it can be stuck so well that it can actually cause the FEP film, or the NFEP in this case, to rip or tear and put a little hole in it. That's why it's always better to remove the resin from the vat and check and make sure that everything's okay. There's no holes or anything, there's no leaking, because with such a big vat you really don't want this resin to leak out of here. It's going to cause all sorts of problems. I'll drain this and we'll come back and we'll put another print on and we'll get this thing dialed in properly. It's been a few weeks since we've had this beast on the desk here, and I've been printing a few things. One of the things we printed was this mask. It printed really, really well, but one problem is we ran out of resin. You can see there, it's just missed out and not quite finished, which is super frustrating. But apart from that, it's a really cool looking model. The detail on it is really, really good. It printed in one piece. Have a look at this in here. You can see this is the model we've just finished. The detail looks amazing. I'm really looking forward to getting this off and having a look at it. So there you have it, guys, the Sonic Mega 8K. I'm really impressed with the size of this beast. I'm not a massive fan of the build plate and also the vat. I just think that it needs to be a little bit deeper and just make these posts here a little bit longer at the top here, and then you could make the vat a little bit deeper as well, and that would really be a really simple way to get a bit more resin in these printers. But apart from that, it's a really solid machine. I love the fact it's full metal. Keep making metal machines, Phrozen. A lot of these other companies we're seeing coming out with these plastic machines, and I don't understand why we're heading down this path of let's make these machines as cheap as possible. I really believe that the build quality is super important, and having something that's sturdy and metal like this really makes a big difference. Thanks a lot for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, but most importantly, remember to keep on 3D printing.